to stand up, introduce
Okay.
yourself.
Came
okay?
back.
It's up?
Yep.
Oh, okay, all right. You want me to go back to the other page so you get that?
I should be a
Okay.
rocket scientist.
Yeah. All right, in the meanwhile, while we're doing this, all right, new people.
I'm not the only one.
No, you're not.
Okay. My name's Philip. I work down at the fire department on the far end of base. New member, about a month and a half or so. Just started flying. Took my third lesson this morning with Jerry, and here I am. Any questions that I need to answer for you guys?
Well, now that
Depends on where it is on the runway.
Okay.
well, you know, it's interesting because now we got the fire department.
Faster than that last one.
We got the fire department now. We got some F-16 pilots in the club, and we also have 2 doctors in the club, and we got a nurse, Joan, and we're doing pretty good. You know, we can have our own unit here in helicopter pilot.
I have a question. Can you follow the runway for us?
Yeah, we can, and then of course we got an American airline captain over
Can you
there,
phone
too.
the runway for me?
Phone the runway? Yeah.
Yeah. Phone the
Let's
runway.
do that
I'm
one.
coming in hot.
That's good, and welcome to the club.
Thank you.
You could introduce her too, but that's,
I just tag along.
you just tag along, okay. We call you tag along, yeah. Okay, all right, we got some other new people. All right. Right, you,
Come here. Says I'm out of here. Hi, my name's Dan Dzugaloff. I'm the new wannabe instructor here. I'm a Boeing 737 airline captain. Been to the corporate side, a few jets there, fly helicopters. So, an A&P mechanic. Yeah, I can't fly anything, just a simulator on the desk right now. So, if I can help you with anything, feel free to ask me. There's probably a lot of questions I'll have for you guys to help me also. The fueling things, the flight, you guys talk about these flight plans today, I'm just going, huh? So, if you guys can help me too, that would be great. Maybe we can help each other.
all right, so welcome. You introduced the dog.
Oh, Gizmo. You'll see Gizmo around. He's kind of a fixture around the club. He's actually my PTSD service dog. So he was a IUD bomb sniffing dog in Afghanistan. And he got hurt and came back, and they retired him, put him through behavioral compatibility training, and they have a program at the VA called Pets for Vets. I had an accident over there, and they put us together. So we've been together for about 3.5 years. Normally he has his vest on, but it's the one day he cleaned.
All right, let's see. Did we already introduce you, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, sure we did, yeah. Okay, I think so. I think that's about it. Well, actually, returning members. Ski? He left for a little while.
Jim Strzelecki, I had a little problem with medical and got it back, and I'll buy any over there.
Yeah, it's, he's proof that even though you get medical problems, you can come back. Jim and I used to fly together many years ago on the 141, way back in the old days. That was even before Massey got into it, so Ward over there came in later. Okay, and I think that's it. I don't think we have any, did we get you? No, yeah, before? Oh, you. Yes, you. Yeah, I think we did get, yeah. But how many guys here on the Civil Air Patrol? Yeah, we got a fair amount. Yeah, so a lot of you guys, you know, it's neat that, you know, you'll be able to be in the Civil Air Patrol. I always highly recommend it if you're a student especially. It's a good way to get into some real flying, because the CAP, they do fly missions. As you'll see tonight on my thing tonight that we're talking about, they do missions. Here it's different. But here it's supposed to be for fun. Okay, new pilot ratings. Has anybody here just got their new pilot rating? That includes Soul Wing for the first time, or anything else, and this includes even airline jobs too, and Air Force or Marines, if you're a pilot for the Marines, or helicopters, anything that you just recently gotten anything. Well, I know you just started flying, so that's a milestone.
The war track is mine, back off, okay?
Okay, anybody else? Anybody? Anything? Okay.
I did a formation clinic up north in Madeira in April. Got cleared for the 4 ships.
Okay. All right.
RVs. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Huh? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Color on too.
Ken, anything with you?
I lived.
You left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Walked away from the landings.
Okay, good.
It's good.
Good. Okay. Anybody got anything taken away from them by the FAA or anything like that?
My birthday.
Your birthday. Okay. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah. I know some of people haven't flown for a while. But anyhow. Okay, experiences. This is where George can stand up and talk about what happens down there in Fallbrook. Anybody that has any kind of experiences that they can share with the rest of the club.
836, lost power in the island at Ramona. Bob. Kept out okay.
What was that,
Runway closed
George?
About 5 minutes. I think it was switching tanks or something in the battle. Switch or didn't switch.
Switching tanks.
You let him go dry. You never do that in a Bonanza.
Did
Serves
he,
him right.
did he make it?
Yeah, he got down.
Well, he's not up there still, Raj.
Well, yeah, it's a fair question. Yeah. Steve Fitch, what about you? I know you got your plane painted. Have you flown it yet? Huh? Oh, it's still being painted. Holy smoke, man. That's taking a long time. Steve likes to fly these long flights. He goes to Texas with his airplane and back. Anybody else had anything that's gone on that's exciting that's telling the club? Obviously, we're not having anybody doing anything. Anybody? Okay. All right. All right. Bob's going to stand up and talk, and then I'm going to stand up and talk too. You notice that Bob back there is, I was going to try to get a whip up here on this guy up front, but I wasn't able to get it drawn in there, but he's making this guy pull this aircraft engine. And this
I'm
poor,
just trying to hold it back, that's all.
yeah. So anyhow, Bob, you're up.
As most of you know, we had a standards meeting earlier. We covered some of the items here. So I just want to review again for all the members and in regards to the Aero Club aircraft. We're running about 50 hours for the month right now. It's about 50% of what we really need to look at. Last month we lost $5 even though we made about $1,600 more than the previous month, but figures show it, and maintenance, that's where we're going with maintenance. When you're taxiing an aircraft, remember that you're going to add power to get it moving and come back to idle. You should have enough momentum and enough power under the prop at idle to take and pull you back out of the parking area and make it run down the yellow line. I've seen and noticed that there's a lot of people carrying excess power, whether you're in the 182 or in the Alpha models or in the Charlie model. When you start carrying power, you don't need that kind of power to make it run once it gets moving. Therefore, you're on the brakes to control what you're trying to do. What's that do? It heats the brakes up and we wear out our brakes. So get the aircraft moving, bring it back to idle, see what it's going to do. It looks like it wants to stop, then we're going to add another couple hundred RPM. Get it moving again, keep that RPM down, and we'll save a lot of our maintenance costs. I think last month I covered the 2 bald spots on the tire. Remember, tennis shoes, no boots, keep your feet on the floor. You can land the airplane and taxi almost all the way down to the end of runway 30 with using very little brakes and make the turn onto the taxiway Delta at about 30 miles an hour. 5.6 hours, and it cost us $500. I want to reiterate, $500, 6.5 hours on that ball tire. 2 quarts. So you don't need brakes. Keep your feet off the top, keep them on the floor. Just use your toes. Guide the rudder, and when you're slow enough, you can apply the brakes. We're using too much oil. I say too much oil because we have no information as to where the oil is going. Right now, I'm about 4 quarts down from the previous case that was put out 2 weeks ago, and I go back into the computer, and there's no indication of where that oil's gone. The oil I have measured is the T34, which is 234 Whiskey Papa. That's a high oil user right now. I have a couple quarts in 5.6, 1 quart in, I believe it's 15 Foxtrot, 0 quarts for 2.9 Foxtrot, 1 quart for the 182, and I show no quarts for 6.6 November. So somewhere along the line, we have to take an account for this, and we're trying to figure out where it's going. We can only take and look at our cost if I know which airplane that oil is going into. Even though we're buying it at a reduced cost, and by the way, for your information, Jan 1st, oil prices went up almost $5 a case. So we can look at more stuff that's going to go up, including fuel. Just helped out the club, helped me out, helped Roger out by keeping it marked. We're looking at maybe reorganizing the fuel sheet to show the amount of oil usage there, or a sheet that goes into each aircraft that will take and you can mark down the amount of oil that you've measured 15 to 20 minutes after you've landed. That's going to be the most accurate time. You can find the oil measurements in your engine. Wet sumped engines, which is the 234 57ZZ and the 182 have wet sumped. They're going to be pretty standard, so you can measure it almost any time. You may be off about a half a quart, unless there's a prop seal that's getting weak and it starts draining back into the sump. If you're having problems putting oil in, we have a funnel. The aircraft, you can only stay clean if you use the funnel and pour the oil into the oil cap, especially in the 172s, if you use the funnel. When you get to 5.7, you're going to have to use a funnel because you can't get the oil can in amongst the cowling to pour it into the engine. That's the way that engine is set. And that oil filter sits in the middle of the engine. I want to stress currency real quick. Watch it, put it on the calendar when your last flight was. Don't come in here 2 weeks afterward and say, you know, I just noticed that I'm not current, what can we do? We can't do anything at 2 weeks. If you're a day, we can make things work. But there's no way when you're 2 weeks out, whether you're night qualified or day qualified or just making landings. You know, this is up to you. You're going to have to keep up with your logbook. We're trying to help you, and it keeps you up to current standards, and we meet all the regulations that way. Cleaning. T-34 nose gear areas, got to keep them clean. It's a dust bowl out here. That's one of the worst areas. We got micro switches in there that create problems, especially with the nose gear for the T-34s. Some have nose gear doors, some don't. Make sure you get all the oil out of that nose gear area. And the bellies. We've had complaints where some of the oil, because the way the system is set up for smoke, dribbles along the fuselage on the belly, collects mud or dirt. It gets pretty grimy. And most of the guys that try and keep up with the T-34 will spend an hour out there trying to clean it. So when you go out there and you fly it and you come back and it's 15 minutes, you figure you've got it clean. It's not clean. Leading edges are still got bugs on them. Higher the temperatures, the harder the bug gets off the wing. And canopies. Be polite to your next pilot. Clean the canopies. That's windshield, leading edges, and struts on all the aircraft. I've mentioned it once before, and then we all finished here. On the fuel nozzle was replaced not too long ago. It looks like it's been through the war. Pick up the fuel nozzle when you're done. Don't drag it on the ground. You're just wearing it out. That's going to cost us money. We're down to a point now that in the future, there's probably going to be 2 Aero clubs. We're running about 50-50 right now, staying open and staying closed from the last information, which was 2 years ago. And that's because of our profit margin and where we are in profits. So we can stay active and we can stay open if everybody does their fair share and try and keep costs down. even though it may seem like it's minuscule in some areas, every dollar helps, every penny helps. When I'm buying fuel, I just remember talking this before, I look at a penny per gallon difference. And if I'm buying 5,000 gallons versus 6,000, or 5,000 versus 7,000 gallons, there's a break in between there to keep our costs down. And fuel prices are going up. There's nothing we can do about it. You look on the outside, we're still down quite a ways on that. I have been notified to look at renovation and doing a self-help project for painting the Aero Club, the interior. I've been notified that maybe it's APF money, which is appropriated funding, and it's not NAF money. I just been told to go do it. If this person wants to spend the money, I don't care what fund it comes out, we'll do a self-help. So I'm figuring out the square footage and how much paint I'm going to use. The scheme is going to be Air Force dark blue on the bottom, a red stripe, and Air Force light blue on top. So we'll have about 4.5 feet from the red line up and 3 feet from the floor up to the red line with a 4-inch stripe around it. It's going to make the club look pretty decent. It'll keep it the camaraderie in regards to the Air Force is concerned. If it was Navy, I'd do it dark blue, but that's the way it is. There is a little rivalry in here. Sorry about that.
Go Navy.
Anyway, any questions of what I've covered real quick, like? Thank you.
Can I add a little quick something? With the new covers that go over the tops of the planes, especially the 182, be sure to use a ladder because that thing's hanging up on the antennas. And we're going to break antennas off, so make sure you're not tugging on it if it's landed. If the wind catches it on an antenna, it's going to hurt anything.
The key to the new covers is you start from the front, strap it down, and then throw it back over the top, and then you pull it back down off the top and the back, and then re-strap it down. I think once you've done it a couple times, it gets pretty useful. We've cut off one antenna on the 182 because it's a ELT antenna, and we'll never use it. There's 2 more antennas to be cut off. So that's what we're going to end up doing.
Hey, Bob, any news on the T-34s or?
555 is still at the shop for the wing mod. I have not been notified where they are. I'll make a phone call tomorrow. I'll go out with an email if I find out information. I was anticipating the engine from 5.7 back, believe it or not, next week, but I'm not sure either on that. He was supposed to send me a new invoice because they had to buy some additional parts in regards to that engine one was an oil pump. The interior of that oil pump was pretty well chewed up. He's got to buy a new casting for that, so that's going to be an additional charge. We have about $3,000, $3,500 additional in the kitty that's been appropriated for that engine, so we do have enough to cover any additional cost for that, and I have not received anything. I need to make a call to Tim's Aircraft on that one also. But those are the 2. We were hoping to get at least one back for the 4th of July. It's not going to make it. Any other questions?
In 6/6 November, is NAV1 ILS going to get working?
Yeah, we're working on that one too.
Okay.
I have my list. That's what they want to do as far as appropriations and what they're going to approve. So the key to this was we spend money on the first month of the quarter, the second month of the quarter, and now that we're in June, we don't spend any money, but we need to spend money in June because we got to get certain things fixed, but that's just the way it goes for the Aero Club. So we're working on it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
What's
you
wrong
see
with this
that?
picture?
Yeah, what's wrong with this picture?
Looks like a C5.
C5, oh boy.
Well, it's got one of those rotator wings.
Or this, that's a little more balanced there. So you could probably get that down the taxiway. Huh. The O2 is gone. For those of you who used to fly it, you can shed a little tear if you want. It's gone. So, yeah. The guy got it, and I guess the guy's dad flew that in Vietnam, was it?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah. And we had a lot of people help out on that. A lot of people came out, and I appreciate it, really do. We really, we actually are trying to think of compensating and helping you out a little bit on that.
By the way, just real quick, those people who worked on the aircraft and tearing it down, see me afterwards. I've already talked to John and Anyway, the guy gave me some money and I just divvied up the money. You guys go out and buy lunch or breakfast with it. We'll help out.
And Coggins, he was out there too. Okay,
Oh, I got Josh. Josh has been paid off.
okay, paid off, okay. In case you haven't renewed your medical, I don't know how many, I pop this up periodically because I get people that come in and don't realize that you gotta do everything online now through the FAA to renew your medical. So, if you have any questions, I'll just call me up and I'll give you, it's real simple. It's just FAA.gov or this site up there, FAA Med Express at medexpressfaa.gov. And you can fill out your forms there now. And so that's the way they do it now. So you've got to go through the FAA before you go see the doctor.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
If anybody uses Dr. Van der Welstein down in Riverside.
Oh, wait, nope, I've got that already.
Never mind.
Right there. That was my next thing. Yeah, those who had Dr. Van Dowesine, okay, I used to been able to say it all the time with no problem. Never mind.
That guy.
All of a sudden, I'm right out.
Dowesine.
Anyhow, those who had him before he passed away, so you are going to have to find another medical examiner. And again, right down there, FAA Med Express, and that gives the address. Or simply just go to FAA.gov and just click on licenses and certification.
Or I have a list.
Huh?
I have a California list.
Yeah. Any of that, they'll take you to all the doctors, and actually there they'll take you to the ones that are closest to you. There are some really good doctors out there. But I know that Dr. Van, he did a lot of people, and he was kind of primary. We had his card, and a lot of our students used to go over there to him all the time.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
He was a fairly young guy. Anybody know what happened to him?
Well, I don't know if he was that young.
He's 68, I think.
Yeah, he was like 68.
He had some medical issues.
Well, yeah.
I scheduled an examination with him the day after he died. I had scheduled the day that he died. There is just a comment on this is I was in a really hard to get I have to get a first class physical. Some don't. If you need to do a second or third class physical, there's a Dr. Owen up in Apple Valley. I think it's Apple Valley. It's about 45 minutes from here up the freeway up the hill. He'll take you at the last minute. He's a pediatrician. Really good guy. It's $75 for the medical, and he'll do you. You can call him up that morning, and he'll usually try to slot you in. Really nice guy. I went up there thinking he could do a first class. There's a miscommunication between the secretary and I, and he did the whole examination and turned around and gave me all my money back to go somewhere else to do it. There's also a first class medical examiner about 5 miles from him. A little tougher to get into, but this guy's I'll get the name and post it. He'll take it at the last minute, and a really great guy. Like I said, give me all my money back, and I ended up going to my old doctor in Van Nuys.
And if you're a Kaiser member, Kaiser Fontana's got a doctor also.
Yeah, there are two Kaiser AMEs. You're absolutely right, because I tried to get in with them and I couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, you can't unless you're a Kaiser member.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so there's a lot of options. If you happen to be in the 163rd, they do have a flight surgeon that happens to be an FAA doctor also, but that's not the best place. Even the guys in the 163rd tried to go to him, and it was not real easy at all. So, okay, and one of the things that we do is that we go over what used to be SOPs, now it's the operating instructions. And tonight we're just talking about real quick the paragraph under maintenance, chapter 6, under 6.6, and under fuel quantity assurance program. The tank that we have out there is 10,000 gallon tank, and it meets all the standards. And of course, the EPA lady out here who doesn't know hardly anything about that kind of stuff kept telling us that we needed a sight gauge, which, we're just going, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, we'll do that, which we don't. We don't have to have a sight gauge, but that's beside the point. Fortunately, we do have a person that's from the EPA on base who's on our site, and he does everything he can to help us out. once he retires, which I think he said he's retiring in a few months, we lose him. I don't know, we can't guarantee anything right now, because the EPA has a lot of power on military bases because it's a federal-owned property. And you can go 2 feet off the front gate out here and throw batteries and paint and everything else all over the place and nobody can do anything about it. But you walk 2 feet into the gate and boy, they'll hang you by your neck. $15,000 fines and all that stuff. That's why we're really trying to push. Don't just take oil cans and throw them in the trash can in the main office. So that's something that we got to watch out for. So anyhow, it's a double walled tank, and that's the place where you fill up your airplanes. There's fuel filters, and the filters do not require periodic replacement inspection. The aircraft fuel tanks are visually inspected by sampling fuel prior to each flight for contamination and proper color. And of course, everybody should be watching that anyhow, especially when you pogo the fuel tank. Any questions on the SOP? Okay. Okay, decision making for pilots, or doing the right thing at the right time. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. This is a general overall view. This subject can be extremely detailed. Decision making, there's a lot of psychologists, aviation psychologists, a lot of people that get into this. What makes a person do certain things in certain situations, how they think. My own daughter is a psychologist, so matter of fact, she just got hired as a psychologist here today.
One of my kids is psychotic too.
Yeah, is he? Okay, yeah, she's been psychotic. She did that because she's trying to understand me.
Who can they live with?
That's exactly right, yeah. Okay, poor decision making. Generally speaking, it is the root cause for many aircraft accidents. How many here read the safetygram or the PIF, the last one? Hopefully you guys who've been flying have, yeah. If you remember, it's actually the Aero Club safety officer for all Aero Clubs, and he was talking about how he tried to take off from a runway that was 3,000 feet long in his twin. I don't know what kind of airplane it was. He didn't identify what the airplane was, but it was a twin. And he's taken off from that runway many times. And made all of his calculations and all that kind of stuff. But this one day, he decided that he was going to go and fly. He didn't have any extra fuel in it. It was just normal fuel that he normally has all the time. And he had no passengers, no cargo, no nothing. But the day was unusually calm. No wind or anything like that, but it was hot. And as the article said, it was 108 degrees, I believe it was. And so he started down this runway, and when he hit the 1,500 foot mark, where the plane usually rotates off the runway, he was still, I think it was 10 knots below his rotate speed still. Well, right there, that should have told him something. But he continued on with it, and as he got down further in the runway, he hit the 2,400 mark and the plane lifted off. So he had 600 feet left. Not much room there for any kind of error. So he, in the article, for those of you who haven't read it yet, I suggested that it's the latest PIF that's in the computer, and it's also hanging on the front of the computer too, the hard copy. But I extracted out of that article a couple of items in there, and one of those is his comment is I've done a lot of takeoff and landing data calculations, but I made the same takeoff plenty of times. That's words that you, when you read NTSB reports, you see that all the time. I've done this over and over again. After crunching the numbers many times and operating there routinely, I become very comfortable. People, you don't get comfortable in an airplane, on takeoff and landings especially. I mean, there's a time to be comfortable. Yes, obviously you can't sit there wired the whole time. But as we'll go into this a little bit further, you know, that's not the words you don't really want to hear. Now, the words like "I'm comfortable in the airplane" to a passenger, they might want to hear that because they don't want to hear that, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable with this airplane." No. But you internally, as a pilot, you shouldn't be just comfortable. You should be looking at everything that we're going to be talking about here tonight. So, he was very comfortable going in and out of this field. And of course, we see the complacency in this. You can see it quite a bit. But the complacency led to about 1,500 feet into the takeoff roll. I realized this takeoff was somewhat different. So, you know, at that point, maybe he should have made a decision. Well, he did. He made a decision to continue on with the takeoff. Depending on the individual, you know, that might have been the time to just maybe I shouldn't try taking off and just rejecting the takeoff. But he continued on. I was lightweight, but was still at least 10 knots from rotation speed. I usually got airborne about 1,500 feet. Then those famous last words. I wondered if I should abort the takeoff. Okay. Well, there. He made it, and he did get off the ground. But as he puts it in the safety gram, you know, he shudders to even think if he had lost one of his engines on the twin. And I guess there's trees off the end of that runway too. If anything like that, you know, had happened, you know, it would have been over, you know, pretty much. Most of our complacency is not from malicious recklessness. It tends to sneak up on us, kind of like what happened here. So what he says is, I keep looking back on how this could have become a classic accident chain, error chain. He's not a lazy pilot, as he puts in the article, but I ended up making a poor judgment call, basically is what happened. How many know about the Gulfstream that crashed on May 31st? Hanscom, yeah. It killed everybody, and that one there's still under investigation. Basically, he went down the runway and crashed off the end of the runway going 180, I think it was 160.
Well, he went off the runway
No,
100 knots.
Yeah, 165 knots. And they hit, when he said rotate, they realized that the airplane wasn't lifting off the ground at that point. And they were at 80 knots at that point. But they just kept going and crashed off the end of the runway. Well, and the reason why this thing is still under investigation, well, they always are. It takes at least a year for most of these things. But every indication, according to the black box in the airplane, is that the elevators were in the locked condition. They were not unlocked. Now, when they did find the crash, there's a manual lock up on the pedestal up front, and that lever was in the off position, so it didn't indicate that it was unlocked, or locked rather. And the black box also, you know, it didn't indicate that there was any warning saying that it was locked, and yet all the indications for the takeoff roll was all that the elevator was in a locked position. And because it didn't move. It stayed in the position it would have been if it had been locked in that position. So that's one of the big things they're going to have to look at. But again, here's a decision that somebody had to make. I did show this video about that one airplane that was brand new, that it was a brand new twin high wing, and I don't remember what the name of the airplane was, but they were taking pictures, of course, of the airplane doing its first maiden flight. And when the plane took off, it went up like this and just went straight up like that and just went right into the ground. And it come to find out that the elevator had a control lock on the actual elevator in the back, and they never pulled it out. The thing that really gets me is that they never went through the flight control check. And that also shows up on this accident here too. They never did any flight control checks at all. Now, there's policies in different airlines. Some airlines have, you know, and this is just a small biz jet here for a company. Matter of fact, the co-owner of the airplane was on the airplane. But a lot of places, they check the controls at the beginning and then they don't do it after that. Well, to me, that seems ridiculous because in the Air Force, we did it every single time. Every time, just before we take off, we always ran the flight controls through. And that's true, isn't it, Bill? You guys still do that, or you know, everywhere you go, you run it through the checklist and you run the flight controls through.
Can I make a comment on the G4?
Yeah.
I happen to have 2,300 hours in the G4 itself. I'm typed in the G4 as a captain. The gust lock is literally, here's your throttle controls here. The
Yeah.
gust lock is just down to the lower left hand
Yeah,
on the main
that's what they
panel.
were saying,
And it
yeah.
comes up to a 90-degree position when it's locked. And it's red. You've got to see it. When you put it down, you're going to find pilot complacency here due to the fact that the G4 is a glass cockpit. It has 6 DUs. The number 4 DU is used for your pre-flight inspections. And the number, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your number 1 has an electronic checklist in it that you have to identify and verify. And you have a button on your yoke. The captain has to verify it after being identified by the co-pilot. He presses his button. It goes from red to yellow, and the captain presses his button to verify. That goes to green in the checklist. And we have flight control checks on the number 4 DU. Part of your pre-flight check is to do a full check of your aileron, elevators, and rudder positions. And you have I'm sure you have in some of the bigger jets you guys fly, but we have T displays that show things moving left and right. And if there's any restriction in movement, you will actually get a red, amber red on the checklist and will not be able to continue on the checklist.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the pilots overwrote that or
Yeah,
what happened
they
there.
don't know, and they're not really going to know until they do more investigation on the thing. They salvaged the airplane and all that and pulled it out. But again, our point here in this meeting is the fact that there was something wrong, and they even mentioned it. And according to the NTSB on the cockpit voice recorder, when they hit the 80 knots and they hit rotate, there was comments about the handling of the airplane not being able to get off the ground. And you would think that maybe somebody might have thought maybe we should reject. So that's just one of the comments. Good decision making. Good decision making is not just for high time pilots. Our students here at the Aero Club, I mean, I can tell you right now, Joan over there, who's a new pilot, could probably rip some of you older pilots apart in knowledge and how to fly a safe airplane. But there's a lot of things that we all go through, and of course, as the older we get, sometimes we get complacent as far as, all these different things that's strong winds, engine failure, emergency landings, and all that kind of stuff. A good decision can be made by any pilot as long as they have their situational awareness in a situation. The difficulty is recognizing potential hazards and taking the timely action to avoid them. Obviously, if an older pilot who has more experience, who's been through it all, like Fred over here, and Jerry, and all you guys that's flown airplanes for many, many years, you run into things that a young new pilot may not have seen before. And so your chances of coming through some kind of emergency of some kind is probably a little bit better because you've had that experience. I know that Mike back there probably has been through a few of them. I know a lot of you guys, Steve Fetch, when he flies across the United States in his little Piper 140, is that what it is? Like I said earlier, this subject can get very detailed. However, just for the purposes of this safety meeting right now, mostly what we're going to talk about is most bad decision accident involve the following areas. Okay.
Roger, can you speak up just
just a little bit.
Oh gee, Malcolm, gosh, you sit clear in the back, and I have to sit there and force myself to talk loud. I know, no, you deal with it. I got it, Malcolm. All right. All right. I am not going to yell this loud all through the meeting because I can't, my voice is not going to take it. All right. This subject can get very detailed, okay? However, for this purpose of this safety meeting, we're going to talk the most bad decisions, accidents involve the following areas: utility, ability, and fun. Okay? Utility. Trying to get more out of your airplane than what the airplane was designed to do.
Futility.
It's what?
Futility.
Utility. Yeah. Utility. Okay, what am I doing wrong? Okay, how do you say it?
They're saying futility with an F.
I'm not saying it with an F.
I know, but they are.
They are. Oh,
They're being a pain in the ass.
yes, I know. Okay. Some of which is flying into icing, inadequate icing, and like the T-41, which has no anti-icing equipment. Overloading the aircraft out of CG limits, flying your T-41A into canyons where you can't fly out of due to low power. That's aircraft limitation. Okay, ability. Ability. Okay? Did I say that correctly?
Did you say senility?
Well, that might be for the pilot, yeah. Trying to get more out of your flying skills as a pilot. Flying into IMC for non-instrument pilots. That happens all the time. A brand new pilot trying to land an LAX in your Cessna 150. I actually did see this happen up at San Francisco with a student pilot with the Vandenberg Air Force Base Aero Club 150. He thought after he was still a student, but he was going to fly in the San Francisco International with that airplane. And they tried to talk him out of it and all this stuff, and I don't remember what all happened. I don't remember if the guy actually even ended up doing it. All I know is that this guy had no common sense whatsoever. Anyhow, flying your F1 or your Cessna 150. Okay, fun. Having too much fun in an airplane. Yes, you can have too much fun in an airplane. I'm going to buzz my house. There's been several F-16s that have crashed because of this. They are, reserve F-16s. Low-level flying, aerobatics, and more of those kind of things. Having that kind of fun is not necessarily the safe way to do it. Can you read that, Malcolm?
What I can see.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. If you read it, then I don't have to say anything. Okay, before you go. All right, this is before you even get into the airplane. That's the time to make all your decisions, start getting as much information as possible, especially weather, but also on your aircraft. That's why you do a pre-flight. That's why you check your oil. That's why you check all those things. That's why you check all kinds of your destination weather, what's going on, what is your destination. If you remember a few months back when we did that one where we did the scenarios, the guy did an excellent job checking his destination airport. His destination airport was a high traffic airport, and he did his job in figuring out how he was going to get into that place. Of course, the problem was he didn't do it going back the other direction. He ran out of fuel and crashed. But anyhow, think through everything that you can possibly think about. I mean, you have checklists. I mean, we have things online that you can download that have all kinds of things that help you in figuring out what it is that you need to look at before you fly an airplane. And Air Force has been doing it for years, and they try to teach all the pilots, to look at all these things. Obviously, you know, you've got many factors that come into the picture. You know, you got time, I'm in a hurry, you've got emotions, you might have just had a fight with your wife, and so that might just, or your husband, and you just might not be thinking about everything. There's a lot of things that come into play here on your pre-flight, just before you fly. Okay, continuing with the before you fly, this is where you get this get home-itis thing, and that's what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. Just say no. That's not really easy, and many of you know that. I mean, when Bob and I went down to Texas, I kept trying to tell Bob no, and Bob says no, we're going to go anyhow. until George Watson came in with his T-34 and said no, we're not going to go. So we didn't. So it's not easy. You sit there, but I'll tell you, there's a couple of ways to keep yourself from getting in trouble with that, and that's to give yourself permission to not fly for that day, or permission to realize that when you get to your destination, you may have to buy an airline ticket to come back home, or rent a car and drive back. Believe me, psychologists will tell you if you give yourself permission to do something, oftentimes the person will act on that. And give yourself permission to that's the other option. Plan B or C or D. Well, looks like we're not going to be able to fly the airplane home today. Looks like we're going to end up renting a car and driving home. So aviation, especially in what we do here for fun, is not something that we have to do unless it's an absolute emergency. Something's going on that causes it to become a real emergency at home or something like that. But for the most part, we fly for pleasure, and so there's a time to sit there and say, hey, let's take Southwest Airlines home today. I'm sure they're safe too. Okay. Here in the Aero Club, unlike the Air Force, Navy, and Civil Air Patrol, we take trips or flights, not missions. And basically, that's what we are. Air Force is another story. We've taken off many times. And Bill over there can attest to that. I've been with him a couple of times where we've had to go, okay, we got to go on a mission. We have to go on this, But see, Air Force also trains you in those things too. Any questions so far? Any making fun of me anymore?
Oh, yeah, well, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just want to make a comment about, you might want to consider your gut feeling too. 2 weeks, was it 2 weeks ago on the attack on 6th November?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I just didn't feel right about flying, and I went ahead and did the pre-flight anyway, and taken off, which is really a bad time to feel like you should be flying, because when I'm rotating, I'm like, something just doesn't feel right. And I got out and started heading, took off Port Hemet, then kind of went, headed north to go up to Redmond. So tower tells me to turn the transponder on. He doesn't have me on transponder. I'm fiddling with the transponder. I can't get it to work. So this is kind of good, which I realized I was flying VFR and tower had me and he just said, continue to fly VFR. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I kept going. I ended up going over to Redlands, and on the way over, the TAC is making this buzzing sound, and I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And doing a little bit of fluttering. So at this point, I've kind of forgotten that I probably shouldn't have went flying, but I did anyway. So I went around, was in the pattern, did a touch and go, and on my way out, the TAC started going all crazy again, but then all of a sudden it just stopped. So I looked over at the TAC, and there's the needle just bouncing around inside the TAC behind the crystal. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. So obviously I'm not gonna do touch and goes at Redmond because I don't have a pack, but so I'm flying back and I landed, and long story short, I just didn't feel right about flying. So I'm not to say anytime you don't feel right about flying, because maybe it's just you got butterflies or fear or whatever, but for me, I just should have trusted that and not flown. So
Yeah.
don't ever underestimate your
Yeah.
gut feeling.
Yeah, and there is a validity to that. There is. I mean, I've had that happen before. I've had that happen when I was flying in the Air Force, and I felt like that something wasn't quite right. And sure enough, while we were flying out there, all of a sudden we just lost the whole hydraulic system number 2 in the airplane. It just dumped. And it was just really weird, you know, and it was not, you know, about an hour before that, I just felt like there wasn't something right about the way the airplane was flying. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those things, you know, you have to make that judgment. And that's basically, you know, that's what we're talking about here tonight, that decision of what you feel that is right about the airplane. Realistically, on the other hand, if you wait for those perfect conditions, you could end up never flying. You might as well just hand over your pilot's license too. Conditions are not always going to be perfect. And we do fly with airplanes that have some problems with them. We do have the weather not be absolutely perfect. But see, that's why we get trained as pilots. That's why Joan is going through what she's going through as a student, is to learn all these things. And she puts all this stuff together and goes, okay, should I fly or not? And that's one of the things that just brings your whole, you know, your whole focus should be on this. That's why you're getting trained, not being just trained just to, you know, for the giggles of it. It's for, you know, it's for a purpose. There's always risks in everything that we do. But you can stay out of trouble when you think through and be situationally aware. Air Force teaches situational awareness a lot. And that's one of the things, that's being totally aware of what's going on around you. After takeoff, once you decided to go, you enter the continuous decision-making cycle now. And you gather as much information on the pre-flight, of course, and all that stuff that you got there. Then once you start that engine, then you start gathering up more information. And some of your information that you got before the pre-flight may change a little bit once you start the engine. Especially if you get up there and it's just like, you know, what he was saying is that his tachometer went bad. Well, okay, that changed everything right there. I one time took off. I had normal, my airspeed indicator was absolutely normal. And I got right up to where I was to rotate. I rotated and everything looked normal. And I rotated, got off the ground, and as soon as I did that, my airspeed indicator went to 0. Boom, went right to 0. And I go, okay, I guess I'm not going to be doing, you know, a local flight today. And of course I came in a little hot because I didn't know what my airspeed was, but I had a little more experience. If that had happened to Joan, she might have been a little more, you know, worried about that. With my experience, I kind of had an idea about where I was at because I could tell by the sound of the airplane, going over the ground and all that. If you're flying IFR, that could even be a little bit harder, you know, a little bit worse, but it's, you know, again, it's those times that where your experience comes in, but even if you don't have the experience, I'm sure Joan could probably handle the situation because she's been up, flown enough to have some idea of what to look for. So, you know, but Bill, who is her husband, he's got all kinds of experience. So his situation, you know, he would probably handle a little bit differently. Once you start the engine, everything starts updating, you start changing, and all those decision-making factors start getting in there. The big thing is being situationally aware. Situationally aware, anticipate, recognize, and act. And this is one of the things that Bob and I talk about. Think about what could go wrong under anticipation. During takeoff, engine failure. Hope for the best, expect the worst. And it's kind of like you're thinking negatively, but really you're not, because what you're doing is that you're wanting to not make a bad situation worse. And so it's, you know, if you don't think about it, you could end up in a situation you wish you never got yourself into. So think about those things that can happen. And then you got different phases of flights and degrees of anticipation. Obviously on takeoff, what are you going to be thinking about?
Place to land.
Okay, well, yeah, engine failure and a possible place you need to land. As Bob puts it, he always assumes that his engine's going to fail on takeoff. If you're flying in a, especially if you're flying in a single engine airplane, which we all do here. It depends where you're at too. If you got trees off, if you're taking off from Big Bear and the engine fails, well, I hope you know how to swim. I don't. I mean, I'm not a good swimmer, but, you know. Okay, recognize. Okay, this is situational awareness. Recognize the situation, okay? Know what's happened. Pay attention to what's going on around you. That's why you are continually looking at your engine instruments, why you're continually looking at all of your flight instruments. If you got passengers, you also want to kind of, you know, if they're, most of them will probably be asleep at this point, well, if you're on cruise. But just pay attention to everything around you. Some problems will be obvious, like engine failures. Others will be very, very subtle. Vacuum pump failure is very famous for IFR pilots, and it's very subtle. But it can also happen to you in our airplanes, BFR. I flew a Cessna 150 out here out of Riverside, and I had a vacuum pump failure, because I'm sitting there, but it was very subtle because it doesn't happen, boom, just like that. You just all of a sudden, you know, your attitude indicator just kind of goes like this, and you're going, well, I'm flying straight and level, but no, it's dying. So that's something that's very subtle. Okay, once you recognize what the problem is, and just like you did, you acted on it. Okay, that's the thing. Many, many times, NTSB, there's so many accidents because the pilot just thought maybe they could carry on with it, get to the destination. Don't hesitate in reacting to what it is that, whatever the situation is. If you've been thinking ahead, as I stated before, then it should be an automatic thing that you should be doing. Engine failure is obvious. But something like a vacuum pump failure, well, you know, okay, what level of experience do you have? You know, if you're a brand new pilot, you may want to get the airplane on the ground. We've had a couple of guys here who have done that and made the right decision. It was not a big deal. What was the one last year? He put it down at not Corona, but at Camarillo. We had to go up and pick it up. It was a year ago.
Last month.
No. I'm talking about the one a year ago.
Yeah,
but the one,
the previous
yeah,
one was icy.
It was, well, he thought, yeah, he was not, the fuel heat didn't look like it was working. And it could have been, we never had a problem with the airplane after that, but, you know, but we, you know, congratulated the guy because he made that decision. He was a new pilot, and he made the right decision for his level of experience. Now, if Fred had done something like that, we probably would have chewed him out, but because Fred would have known better. But see, that's because Fred has what? How many hours of flying time you got? You know, especially in these airplanes, a lot. So every once in a while, you'll get a situation of something that happens that you never thought about, and usually this is rare. Most of the time, you know, if the training that Joan is getting is adequate for her to know to fly an airplane safely. But every once in a while, there might be something that might happen. But if you're situationally aware and know your airplane, which is vital. That's what, like I said, Joan right now can probably know more about these airplanes than a lot of us can remember at this point. Know your airplane and make those choices accordingly. Okay, this is continue. This is long. That's why I was trying to get Bob to not talk so long. Your choices are based on the type of series and the rate of the situation. Obviously, a fire, you want to get it done real quick. Okay? All right. Overall, it comes down to this. Continue flying the airplane. That's your first choice. The second choice is continue flying, but with a diversion or going someplace else. Land as soon as possible, even off-field if necessary. And that's the worst-case scenario. The more serious the problem or your understanding of the problem, the more conservative choice you should be taking towards doing a precautionary landing, like the student last year and Scott doing it with a 182. It turned out to be not that big of a deal, but he took that precautionary landing anyhow, and it was a good thing he did. And there was nothing wrong, really, we couldn't find anything wrong with what the situation was, but he did what was right, and especially since he had his family with him. And believe me, if I had my family with me, I would do the same thing. So, tough decisions don't usually sneak up on us. Sometimes it's because we're not recognizing the problem and acting on it when there should have been. Like, for instance, these airplanes here, like this one here. The guy in the safetygram, the safety officer there, he made it. These guys in this airplane here did not make it. They should have rejected, but they didn't. Of course, that's easy, that's armchair talking, but the debrief, okay, one of the things the Air Force does does a lot of debriefing. Whenever anything, on all missions they come back, they do a debrief. So does Civil Air Patrol. When we fly here, there's nothing wrong with sitting there and debriefing. I see Rich Martindale and Dr. Kerber, they come back and they debrief their missions when they fly together. I see a lot of guys do that. The instructors, of course, do it with the students. But don't let it stop there. Once you get your private pilot's license, still debrief yourself, Especially if you have an emergency or something like that happens. Then you definitely want to debrief it. Brief yourself as to what you could have done differently, or would you have not changed it at all? Did you do everything exactly the way it should have been done? Okay, full-on emergencies. I've said it a million times here before. Fly the airplane. That's the number one thing. Many airplanes crash. Everybody knows about the L-1011 that went into the Everglades down in Florida because they just stopped flying the airplane. Get on the ground alive and unharmed. Use all resources. You have ATC, you have Flight Watch, you have other pilots, you have passengers that can help you read the checklist. You even have passengers that can help you to, if the window pops out, that can help you, keep things, safety belts on and all that kind of stuff. Don't hesitate to declare an emergency. Boy, I'll tell you, that's another one too. If you talk to ATC, that's one of the other big problems. People don't want to talk. They don't want to fess up. If you get into a bad enough situation, believe me, you will then. What ATC does not want to hear is a pilot screaming in the microphone going, help, 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 and when the pilot's spinning out of control into the ground. And believe me, they do hear that every once in a while. Okay, aviate, navigate, communicate. I know all you old-timers know this. I'm sure that Joan has been taught this too. Yeah. Last but not least, know your minimums. Again, experience comes here. For somebody that's new, you may not want to take off in those mean crosswinds out there. But if you experience a lot of those people, well, hey, this is a challenge. I need to get the practice. Eventually, as a new pilot, you will get there too. But because you do want to get the experience. Like I said earlier, you still take a risk flying an airplane. Of course you do. But see, you're here because you love to fly an airplane. So you're willing to take that risk to fly an airplane and get down to San Diego a whole lot safer than driving a car. So I don't know, which is the risk, you know? I mean, I have people tell me all the time, you wouldn't get me in those little airplanes. And we go, well, okay, you wouldn't get me into that little car you're driving down the freeway either, going 100 miles an hour and crashing into people. So, you know, an airplane, as far as I'm concerned, is a whole lot safer. Okay, this is a quote from AOPA Safety Advisor, direct quote right out of AOP Safety Advisor Ops whatever, number 11. There will always be some risk in flying, and it's possible to encounter a problem that you could not have foreseen. Such situations are statistically rare. If you pay attention to the things that are most likely to cause trouble, weather, maneuvering, flight, crosswinds, and then handle them in a timely fashion, you're unlikely to become a statistic. Okay, any questions? That was a little bit long, but we're only 12 minutes after. And don't forget to sign the sign-in sheet.
28th.
It still should be there. On the 28th of this month, we have our barbecue. Okay? Please come to it. If you just come, you know, just to come and have a hot dog or hamburger. We do need help, though, for hot dogs and hamburgers and buns and all that stuff, because Bob and I, now, you know, we were talking about earlier about the bureaucracy, you know, with NAF funds and all that, we found out we're not allowed to buy food with NAF funds. So that means we are going to have to depend on you guys and what Bob and I do too out of our own pocket. We're going to try to see what we can do, but we do need help in that area. And of course, let's see, yeah, Bill already volunteered to be a cook, so, and it doesn't have to be just Bill. Anybody that wants to cook and help out with that and on the barbecue, that would greatly help. And we need people to help show off the airplanes. We've got Mr. Youngblood has already volunteered to help out in that area, but we do need people to show people who are coming in and interested in the club, and we expect there will be a fair amount of people that will show up, and to take them out the airplane and show off the aircraft. And if it's the airplane that you're used to flying in, that's even better. So, okay, I think that's all there is. That's all I can think of. Again, don't forget to sign the sheet. Next meeting is, oh, that's 234 Whiskey Papa. Next meeting is 15 July. We will have a guest speaker, okay? So you don't have to look at me. What? Why is that?